Hello, everybody. How are you? And welcome to Spiritually Raw. And as always, thank you so much for your energy exchange with us today. And we hope you woke to the most miracle morning and are also having the most fortunate day today. Again, we continue our good fortune. We're continuing this amazing series called Rich Jesus, led by no other than Pastor Ethan Lucas.
What's
Right
up?
on, everybody. His links are in the description below, so you can make sure you can support the cause, keep the dream alive, and learn about what he's doing in his life to help you in your journey in your life. So you definitely should check this out because the messages here, they're super important and they're really helping a lot of people get a breakthrough. But before we bring,
at this time of year is really, Christmas, the birth of Christ. I think really people are really more tuned in now than I would say pretty well, other than Easter, than any time of year. So we're really excited to bring this series to you. We enjoy it just as much as you do. And we are learning just as much as you. So don't think that, this is not new information to us.
Phenomenal. I love it.
It is, which is incredible. I love it.
It puts such a different light on it. But before we get to Ethan and he talks about the day topic, I just want to talk about something super important that's near and dear to my heart. And a lot of us know that, Jesus had this 40 days and 40 nights, and that was probably, a little traumatic for him. But I get a feeling of what got him through was Renew 28, because being in the sun that much, you had to have had something to really come back and look nice and be prepared for the next thing. So again, if you want your Jesus juice, ethanlucas.com, ethanlucas.myclive.com, and just
Actually, you make jokes about that, but I'll tell you what. So the redox molecules in this, I believe Jesus definitely had the ability to make those. I mean, you could turn water into wine. You can turn water into a Sia, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking too. All right, brother, where are we leaving off? How do we run today?
Well, we went over Psalm 23 last time. I think you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of dispelled the traditional beliefs about how it's talking about how you're this slave little sheep and God keeps you in line and he fleeces you and all this nonsense, when actually all it's saying is God cares so much for me that he uses his rod and his staff, which is his power and his ability to comfort me. And when you have comfort, you're not worried about paying the electric bill. You're not worried about putting shoes on the kids' feet. You're not worried about where the next meal's coming from or if you're going to get evicted. That's not comfort. Those aren't green pastures. In fact, we went through that whole chapter and explained how it's telling you that when you tap into this here, which is God within you in the real temple, this temple, instead of the false temples and false idols out here, then you will naturally tap into abundance because God is a giver, not a taker, right? He doesn't want you to live in lack. He didn't say, I've come that they might have lack and have it more abundantly. He said, I've come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. And that word for life was the Greek word zoe, which specifically means the God type of life. So he said, I've literally come that you can live the same way I do, the same way God does. And God isn't broke. I mean, he created everything. I mean, if that's broke, I don't know what rich is. I'd hate to see rich. That would be mind-boggling because I already can't comprehend the amount of wealth and resources in the entire universe. You know what I mean? So that's where we left off. And I wanted to point out something kind of at the end of that, but we ran out of time. So I'm just going to throw it right at the beginning of this. When you go to the first chapter of Genesis, because it kind of piggybacks on that concept or the concepts that Psalm 23 talks about. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, when God put them in the garden, which was full of nothing but abundance, by the way, they had need of nothing. So when in Psalm 23, it says, the Lord is my shepherd or my provider, in other words, my source, I shall not want, meaning he provides so much exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ever ask or accept, which is also scripture, by the way. You can look that up. I don't remember off the top of my head which one it is. It's in the New Testament. But when you consider that the fact that he does that, you look at Adam and Eve in the garden, they weren't just, some two naked hippies running around, eating fruit off of trees and they didn't have nothing. They had full authority and dominion over the entire world, over everything. And then God said in chapter 1, in verse 28, it said, and God blessed them. How many people think that if God is blessing you, that you're broke? Hang on a second. My cat's going crazy. I apologize. I got to stop this. He's just give me 2 seconds. Hang on.
You're good, man. Do your thing. Do your thing.
You know, Ethan talked about the rod and the staff. When he comes back, I want to ask him about that, because is there something extraterrestrial? Is there something otherworldly that is connected to the rod and the staff that we picture in our minds? So, and when he was saying it, you know, I was thinking of, you know, like wands, crystal wands, you know, they have crystals or gemstones, and I'm wondering, was there something, or is there something more to the rod and the staff that maybe we don't know about? Maybe there is something to the Moldavite, right? Maybe there was some type of extraterrestrial or... Hello, Ethan.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, you're
That's
good,
all
man.
right. Is the kitty okay? That's the more
Oh
important.
no, he's fine. He just he's kind of an asshole sometimes, and he knows we're live on air, so he's got to shove his ass in the middle of it.
Is he being a dick today?
What's that?
Is he being a dick today?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So anyway,
Okay, how that goes.
I'm like, I got to stop this now, or he's just going to keep going. You know what I mean?
Oh.
So anyway, so this scripture, Genesis 1:28, and God blessed them. He didn't make them broke. He blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish. That right there was the first, within the first chapter of the Bible, God was already telling us to be fruitful. And that word fruitful comes from the Hebrew word, and I may be pronouncing it wrong because I don't speak Hebrew, but I can read and I can look up definitions of words. It's Peru, I think, is how you say it. It's spelled just like the country, Peru, right? And that word fruitful, or Peru in Hebrew, literally means to produce in excess. And it also is related to the word or concept, and I shit you not, you can look it up yourself, purchasing power. Okay. So if God wants you to be broke, why in the first chapter with the two first people he created did he stick in a garden of bounty and overwhelming abundance? And it says that he blessed them, and then he told them to go out and produce in abundance, just like I have produced in abundance. I want you to be just like me. Do what I do. I produce in abundance. I want you to produce in abundance so you can have purchasing power. That's what it means to be fruitful. Now, how are you going to do that if you're broke, or if you're just barely getting by or living paycheck to paycheck? God does not want his people to live like that. Religion and the demonic satanic systems of this world have programmed you and gaslighted you and beaten you down since you were a child to make you think that wealth, the same wealth that they're fleecing you of, and they're gathering themselves at the top of this food chain. They've convinced you that that's evil and you should feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're in a point in time right now where it's because okay, so Adam and Eve started the whole thing, right? And then then things just went, things started to take a different turn from there.
Yep.
As we understand it. So energetically, did things shift? So for example, like back in there, was it just like, okay, here's your bountiful, okay, have it, enjoy it and stuff like that? What was the pivotal moment where it started to get where people just at a mass consciousness started to be like, we just can't really believe this, or it's not being validated enough? At what point in time do you know that it just started to really change for people? You know what I mean? Where people are like, all right, well, I got come here bountiful, and now I'm like, whatever. This shit ain't for real.
Well, it's not abundantly clear, pardon the pun, but it's not abundantly clear precisely what the fall in the garden was, because the book is highly symbolic. And so it has multiple layers of meaning, and it's written. See, the Bible is written in a way it awakens the deepest and highest forms of consciousness within you. Okay. Symbolism has the power, and for all of you, my psychology people out there, you'll know this. Symbolism has the power to awaken truth and knowledge that's deep rooted and hidden in the subconscious or unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And so the Bible is written in that symbolic fashion for that very purpose, because even while you're reading it and you're still sort of at that rudimentary level, operating from the worldly carnal mind, like religion does, and you're reading it like a fucking newspaper instead of a Bible,
which most people do.
That's the carnal mind. That's the worldly mind the Bible talks about. So it's, since the symbols are hidden in there, it's like hiding your, heart medication for your dog inside of a hot dog and give it to him. He's still getting the medication, whether he believes he is or not, right? Okay. God did the same thing with the Bible. The real medicine, the real truth is hidden like that little pill in the hot dog. So while you're munching on this hot dog, that you're all carnally minded, like the dog's carnally minded and just operating from the lower mind, like, nom, 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 this hot dog's delicious. And the whole time he's getting medicine, right? So while you're reading the Bible, it's actually hitting your subconscious mind with these symbols that the subconscious mind actually understands. So it's very clever that the way that God hid the truth in there in symbols, so that it would be programmed through the whole world like a virus to eventually take over the system when people would start to wake up gradually, like the Neos in the movie The Matrix, that would gradually start to wake up, because eventually, and especially when you're dreaming, the conscious mind shuts off, the subconscious comes awake, and it starts communicating desperately with the conscious mind in the only fucking language it knows, which is symbolism, trying to tell you what is wrong, trying to wake you up. And the problem is it's like some Chinese man and some French guy, and they're like, yelling back and forth at each other, and they don't understand each other. That's the problem between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, between Adam and Eve. Adam's the conscious mind. Eve is the subconscious. Eve is the soul, the divine feminine. Adam is the spirit, the sacred masculine, the conscious mind. Okay. And the Bible talks about this, even in the first chapter of Genesis, I believe it's either the first or the second, where it says, and for this cause, man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one. There are ancient paintings and stained glass windows in some of these old cathedrals with Jesus pointing to the heart and holding up two fingers like this, not like this.
Yep.
That's separated. The two become one. And it's when you become heart centered. Instead of thinking up here, you start thinking here.
I never knew, Ethan, what that symbolism, that image meant ever until right now.
Yeah, you see a lot of the ascended masters or whatever.
It's actually, I really like that image.
Yeah, but that's what it means. It's hidden in symbolism. And your subconscious mind has known that all the time. Why do you think the fucking cabal puts all this hidden symbolism in everything? They don't need to communicate with Adam. Oh, no. The serpent, the reptile, he goes to the subconscious mind. He goes to Eve first, because he knows if he can get Eve, if he can get your subconscious mind, he's got Adam. He's got your conscious mind now.
Yeah. Talking about symbolism, I just want to backtrack 1 second. You had mentioned earlier about the rod and the staff.
Yeah.
Is it, or was it a literal rod and a staff that had some type of extraterrestrial or otherworldly properties to this staff? Or is what you're saying, the rod and the staff, completely symbolic to something totally different?
Well, one thing I had to be careful of is I try not to read into it something that's not there. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that by doing what you're talking about is necessarily reading into it something that's not there. There may be something to it, but I'm also I'm also very cognizant of trying not to look at something that I haven't really dug into real deep yet and try to make a claim about it.
Yep.
So that's one particular thing I honestly haven't dug into as a concept to try to verify one way or another. So I don't have an answer for you on that one, honestly.
Well,
You
thank
know,
you.
I like how
appreciate
you
that.
you know, these little things, and I hope people are getting it like this. There's these little things
You don't
that
try
are
to
going to
make
make
shit up.
well, there's that, and then
Yeah.
there's the fact that these little things will make such a big difference as far as how you perceive these things. Like what you said earlier, like most people read it like a newspaper.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I guess you should ask yourself, is that how you read it if that's what your faith is? You know what I mean? Do you read it like a newspaper because that's what you're told to do? Or do you read it because you feel like, you know, this is my life guide, right? Like how do you look at it? And that's a question what you do. So like in today's world, as we get into practical speaking, as we start to take a look at applying the principles of Rich Jesus, times have changed, energies are different, okay? You know, it appeared to be, at least what you watch on TV, and you know, you can believe everything on TV, right? But it appeared to be like, you know, you could do something in the beginning of time and boom, it would happen. Now it appears it takes, for people, there's this essence of lack of patience, if you would.
Yeah.
What stops people from moving? They kind of already inherently know, look, I got to get closer to God. I get what Ethan's saying. It makes sense. And this is all making sense. And we get that. What do you think in today's world, as we look to 2023, what's the next level we got to be doing? Is it going to be like, we just need to fucking revolt? Is it that we need to, you know, just, do we need to just anticipate it's going to take longer for you to get what it was and be patient with it? Like, how do you counsel people on that?
Well, you can't force a square peg in a round hole, and somebody's not going to be ready until they're ready. And I know that sounds like the same kind of shit that I I rail against in my book, The Guru Bullshit Collection, because you got a lot of these gurus, even the well-meaning ones that are actually correct in what they're saying. I feel like they get so detached from the rest of the people because they're so up here. And so they start saying all this shit that just sounds like they're chasing their tail or talking in circles, right? So we got to be careful not to do that. But it is true that people are not ready until they're ready.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why the Bible says things like, or Jesus said, behold, I stand at the door and knock, because it is a waiting thing. God's already there. He's at the door. And the door is in here. So he's already in here. It's a matter of connectivity. So until you're ready to make that connection, and I will tell you, as a matter of fact, as a naturopath and someone who's had I guess a lifelong study of the human body and health and nutrition and things like that, because my grandfather was a nutritionist. He taught me probably, I don't know, a good 75% of what I know now from the time I was born. I was just I was fortunate enough to be raised in it and just had that education lifelong, because it was just, he was always talking about it over and over. And he taught me how to eat, taught me what supplements to take, taught
That's
me what they did, all that stuff.
Really
okay,
great.
so that led me down my path just naturally to end up becoming a naturopath. But I will tell you this, your body, look, okay, so your three things. Let me back up just a little bit and explain this way. Your three things: you are a spirit, which is consciousness. You have a soul, which is a collection of your mind, will, and emotions, and you live in a body. So we're threefold. And a lot of times we say mind, body, spirit, and soul, four things, right? And that's technically true, because you could separate the mind out from the soul a little bit, because there is another mind. There's that carnal mind, right? And so the question is, which mind is operating as part of the soul? Is it the carnal reptilian brain mind? Or is it the higher Christ consciousness mind, right? So technically both are right, threefold or fourfold for what we are, who we are, how we operate. But of course, you can always go and dissect things down to a million parts if you want to. But basically speaking, you are a spirit, which is eternal consciousness. You have a soul, collection of your mind, will, and emotions, and you live in a body. And so if all three aspects, spirit, soul, and body, are not at their tippy top shape, you are not going to get the maximum effect in life that you should. Okay. This life experience. Yep. And it's a lot like a car. You know, your car can be in perfect working condition. Perfect working condition. All the mechanical parts are functioning properly. But if it's out of gas, it ain't going nowhere. Or the gas tank could be full. All the mechanical parts are working properly, but because now they make cars with computers, the computer's shot. It's gone. Now,
Or
right?
you just run the car to the ground and you never take care of it.
So then you've got mechanical problems, right? The mechanical part in this analogy would be the body.
The body,
right? The computer part would be the spirit, or maybe the soul, and the fuel would be maybe the spirit, or soul, or however you want to divvy that up. But the mechanical part is certainly the body. And here's the problem. If the mechanical part, this avatar, the machinery that you're walking around in and experiencing 3D reality in, if there's something wrong with it, it won't be able to connect to and communicate with the divine. And that's why stuff like this is so important, because it's honestly and every medical doctor out there would probably disagree with me and tell me I'm crazy, I'm a quack, and they'll always revert back to the gaslighting bullshit they've been programmed with. Like, you didn't go to medical school, so you don't know. Oh, you mean I didn't go to pharmaceutical fucking brainwashing school to become a glorified sales rep for Big Pharma? Fuck you. I have a brain, I'm very intelligent, and I can fucking read and I can think. So and I can see testimonials of thousands of people, and I've experienced it myself. So at some point, you're going to have to prove me wrong with the fact that your profession is responsible for more deaths in the world than any other profession. And my profession is responsible for literally 0 deaths. And it actually works. Okay. Now, I'm not here to bash medical doctors. There's a time and place for it. Trauma, your guts are hanging out, you're bleeding, all that, whatever. Okay. You need to go to the hospital. But I'm just saying, the reason the world is so fucked is because, from the perspective of the body, that part, the antenna, the mechanical part that's connected to the divine, is because we've allowed a bunch of worldly minded, reptilian brained psychopaths tell us how to operate God's temple instead of letting God tell us how to operate God's temple. Do you really think the creator wouldn't have fucking put everything here that we need to make sure this thing works right? There's reason we have intelligence and ability to create things like this, to work with this, because the world has fallen. I don't think Adam and Eve needed a sea of Redox, because all they had to do was essentially pick a sea of Redox off the tree and eat it, right? It was right there. But everything has changed and devolved. You hear these scientists, these secular humanists who worship physical matter, essentially, and think that there is no consciousness behind the creation, which is completely absurd and irrational and idiotic. And they'll sit there and talk about evolution, and they act like it's progressive. Typically, and it's ironic because it's actually a scientific fact. Typically, all evolution is regressive, not progressive, right? So what we've actually seen mostly is devolution, not evolution. We're devolving. And so our ability to use this and connect to the higher consciousness and the divine, which gives us the information to create things like this so we can get back what God already created. It's interesting because it's like through the fall, God is forcing us to become more like him, to be creators, right? And we can't do that if we have a broke ass mentality. Do you think somebody broke could have made this?
Not in a million years.
I mean, fuck. And how many how many lives has this saved in a lot of different ways? Again, these aren't medical claims. I don't make medical claims. I don't practice medicine. It's called pharmakia for a reason. In the Bible, that means sorcery and witchcraft. This is natural. We don't do witchcraft. We don't put together man-made poisons and try to trick the body into doing something, and it usually doesn't work anyway, and just mask symptoms instead of solving the problem. So anyway, I got to stop doing my naturopath rant and get some.
Yeah, good. They tie together. It is what it is.
No, it is, and that's my point about what we were talking about. Jay, your original question is, what do you tell people? Well, first things first, clean your house, get your house in order, detox the temple, because no matter how hard you try, No matter what you do, you can sit in a fucking lotus position for 100 hours straight and ohm yourself to fucking death. Oh, and nothing's gonna fucking happen if the goddamn machinery isn't working. You can, you're just putting chocolate milk in the gas tank. It don't fucking work, you know? Like, you've got to detox this and clean this up first, so you've got a clear signal. Every bit, not, we talk about the pineal gland being a direct antenna to God. It's the seat of the soul, and it is. However, that's sort of a misnomer, because really every strand of DNA in your body is an antenna as well. That's why in Jacob's dream in Genesis 32, where he said, I think it was 32:30, he said, I will call the name of this place Pineal, for I've seen God face to face. He laid his head on a rock as a pillow. There's your first fucking clue. It's a symbolic thing, because nobody, like, if I'm had to sleep in a field somewhere, I am not looking for the closest boulder to lay my fucking head on and get a headache and kink my neck, right? I'm going to lay my head in my arm or something like that, or, you know, whatever. I'll find a pile of leaves or something and bunch it all. You don't lay your head on a rock. The Bible does things like this on purpose. It tells you certain things, like the man carrying the pitcher of water, that it knows that when you see that, they're like, oh, that's not literal. Because in the Middle East, men don't carry pitchers of water. That's a woman's job to them, right? That's Aquarius, the man carrying a pitcher of water. So Jacob laying his head on the rock, he ain't laying his head on a literal fucking boulder. He's talking about this rock, the rock that Jesus said, on this rock I will build my ecclesia. He didn't say church either, by the way. He said ecclesia, which is a lawful assembly of sovereigns. Okay? This is where it happens. But every strand of DNA in your body is also an antenna, because in that same story about Jacob's ladder, which is the DNA, he saw angels ascending and descending on the ladder. In other words, angles of light, because angels are light. They're messenger particles. That's what scientists calls a photon, a messenger particle. An angel means messenger. So the Bible is telling you, you've got light photons going up and down every strand of your DNA at God knows how many milliseconds every single waking moment of your life. And that makes it an antenna. It's a receiver and it's a transmitter. And if your transmitters and receivers aren't working right, how do you suppose that how is Adam going to fix something if he's eating the wrong fucking fruit, right? Yeah. How do you suppose Adam's going to be connected to God if he's putting the wrong shit in his body? That's another hidden meaning in that whole Genesis story in Garden of Eden.
You'll be connected to something, but it's not going to be a high intelligence.
Hey, let me ask you.
Real quick, though, I just thought of something. When you said pineal, I thought of pinnacle.
Yeah, they're etymologically they're related. Which is why the pyramid that I have back there that's lit up, that's actually a Himalayan salt lamp, but it is a pyramid. Pyramid means fire in the center. Pyra is fire and mid is center, right? That's the pineal gland. That pyramid out there in the desert over there, it's a lot of things, but one of the things that it is the fire in the center. It represents the pineal gland. Why do you think the capstone's missing off of it? They did that on purpose to show humanity that your capstone is missing. And on the back of the dollar bill, they mock you with that pyramid and the all-seeing eye, which is your pineal, your third eye. It's separated from the body, from the pyramid, right? Okay, so
let me ask you.
Of it says Ordo Novus Seclorum or something like that, which means one world order.
What do you think?
That's how they're mocking you and saying, this is how we're creating our one world order and ruling over you, because we have caused you to continue to eat the forbidden fruit and keep your all-seeing eye disconnected from the body.
Now is that mocking us, or is that, hey, we have to universally do this because this is how we're supposed to cast?
Well, I hear people say all the time that they have to tell you, they have to. I can see where they're coming from, but that's if you're assuming there's honor amongst thieves. And that's assuming that if you think they're going to want to be honest at all. I mean, does the guy that breaks into your house one day, did he call you the day before or send you an email and say, hey, I'm coming over to break in your house? Probably not. So I have my doubts about that. I feel like,
I
again,
do
this
too.
is
Now that you say it that way, I totally agree. It makes absolutely no sense
no.
whatsoever.
We have to tell you. I don't have to fucking tell you.
Ah,
I'm not going to tell you if I'm about to punch you in
right.
the face.
Yeah.
Like it's just, the Bible said, God said, "Come, let us reason together." Not let us have pareidolia together. That's a case of pareidolia. That's an interesting concept you should look up. It's when, and we were talking about this kind of earlier, where people have a tendency to read into things that aren't there because they like what it sounds like. That's how they want it to be. So they
Yeah.
see things that aren't really there. And
Mhm.
that's somebody suffering from something called pareidolia.
Mhm.
As you devolve, or
Yeah.
as we're going through this
Or lack of knowledge.
devolution, if you would, then there's something that's been said, and I don't know how you'll know how to what I'm talking about, but when they said, when two or more get together, kind of thing, right? Is that what's needed right now? Does it need to be at least two or more to really kind of,
Well, it's like magnets, the more you put together, the more powerful they are, the more pull they have. Or like fire, the more torches you throw on the pile, the bigger the fire is going to get, the faster it's going to grow. Now, one match can start a forest fire, but what if you lit 1,000,000 matches at one time in the same forest? You would get quicker results. And so I think maybe the scripture you're referring to is where the Bible says, "Where two or more are gathered in
Mhm.
my name, I will be there." And it doesn't, and it's in my name. It doesn't mean, let's just say in the name of Jesus. Now there is power in that name because it is a frequency. We are in a matrix. There is a code to it. There is a reason they changed his name. God changed Jesus' name the same way and reason he changed Abram's name to Abraham. He changed Sarai's name to Sarah. He changed Saul's name to Paul, and some of the disciples he renamed. But Jesus, as Yeshua, God changed it to Jesus for a reason, because in the Greek, it's the number 888, which carries, remember, you're in a matrix. This is coding. It's all information. It's all frequencies.
Mhm.
So it is important what you say. It is important the words you use many times, not to the extent that these people with pareidolia take it sometimes, but there is power in words. There is power in a name. So, and I'm not trying to be superstitious, but I firmly believe if you break this down to a mathematical construct, you take all the words and you turn them into numbers. This is what numerology does, and you look at their effect on just a flatline neutral universe, okay, it will have a certain effect. But what people don't understand is those who have risen above and they control the numbers in here, the numbers out here don't have an effect on them anymore. Why do you think Jesus was able to do what he did, and why some people can't? Because they're not powerful enough. They have little faith. Jesus said, "Oh, ye of little faith." They couldn't stop the storm. Jesus stopped the storm. All he did was say, "Peace be still," because he had changed the numbers in here, and everybody else is still trying to operate with the numbers out here. Well, the numbers out here are influenced by a lot of things. It's like trying to take down a wave in an ocean.
Mhm.
So
it's not going to happen.
what's happening then when people are chanting, and you see it all the time, Yeshua, Yeshua, Yeshua? What's happening there vibrationally versus Jesus?
Honestly, I can't say that for sure. I mean, I don't have any way of proving what is. All I know is there's a reason his name was changed. And these Christians that want to default back to this Yeshua name and they get all up in arms about it, you might want to stop and reconsider, because you have to understand he had to be born incarnated into the world, into the worldly system. He had to be born into the religious Jewish system. So he had to take on everything of that religious system in order to change it and create a way, because all we're doing is we're tapping into his life when we become one with Christ, right? He's already done it. It's a quantum effect. It's quantum entanglement. That's all it is. Religion doesn't explain this from a scientific perspective, so it sounds like bullshit religious woo-woo, right? But it's actually quantum entanglement. This is a scientifically proven fact with photons. They can quantumly entangle photons. Well, you are a photon. You are a packet of light. God is a photon. The Bible says it. It says God is light. God is photon. And we are made of the same stuff God is, because we're his children. We come from him. We come from his light DNA. We are light beings. So we are photons as well. So this is an issue of quantum entanglement. So there is something real there. And the whole name change thing had to happen for that reason, because otherwise we would still be quantumly entangled to the old system. There's a reason there was the Old Testament, and then we were given the New Testament. It's called a Bible. Bi is two, Old Testament, New Testament, right? And BLE or bell, which is vibration or frequency, word, right? So it's a bi or two words, two covenants. And religion's still trying to live in the old covenant. They're trying to do what Jesus said not to do. He said, you can't take new wine and put it in old wineskins, or the wineskins will burst and you'll lose all the wine. You've got Christians today trying to take the new wine of grace under the new covenant and what Jesus has already done, and they're trying to mix it with the old wineskins of the old covenant, the covenant of law, the covenant of death. If thou do this, you'll get this. If you don't do this, you won't get this. You know, that's the old covenant, the old law. Paul calls that the ministration of death. And God gave it to them to prove to them because they wanted it. They're like, you know, he set them free. And we've talked about this a little bit before, where they were set free because of Moses started this ecclesia with the angels in the desert, by the way, before he went back to Egypt and said, let my people go. And the reason why Moses had to start it with the angels in the desert is because nobody else had this bad boy open since Jacob that we know of in the Bible, right? And that was before they were enslaved. Okay, so since Moses apparently was the only guy that seemingly had this thing open, and he had his, I mean, what better way to get detoxed than to go out in the desert and live, off the land? This guy was drinking mountain water. You know what I mean? Like he was clean, pure. His antenna was wide ass open. So he formed an ecclesia. The book of Acts in chapter 7 says this. It didn't say that God just told him. Look deeper. It says he formed an ecclesia with the angels, and then he saw God face to face in the burning bush, which is on the mountaintop right here. You're the mountaintop. You're the pyramid, the pinnacle, the pyramid, the fire in the middle. The fire in the middle is the burning bush, the open, awakened, lit ass up as hell pineal gland. Okay, so Moses experienced that, and when he did, it lit a fire under his ass, and he said, I got to go get these people the fuck out of here because this ain't going to work. And so when he did that, then he lit that fire under them, finally got them to figure it out, and they picked up and walked out with all the wealth of Egypt, it says. So apparently people who open the pineal gland and get connected to God and set themselves free, not only are they free, but they take all the fucking wealth with them. Because why would you want the world and the enslavers to have the wealth? The Bible says the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So while they're toiling and scheming to collect and lay up all the wealth, it's simply being laid up for us to take. And you can't take it when you're operating from the old covenant, the ministration of death. You have to operate in the new covenant, the ministration of grace and love and health, wealth, and happiness. Then you can take what's been laid up for you, and they will serve you, and not the other way around. And this is why it's so important to understand God doesn't want you to be broke, because you can't be sovereign if you're broke. You can't operate freely. You will always be dependent on a system and someone else, and they will enslave you. Does that sound like God's plan for your life? Fuck no.
And if you're ever in doubt, go back to what you say frequently. Show me a rich slave.
No
Right.
No such thing.
I want to share this. I love this comment from Angela. Oh, awesome. A new installment of Rich Jesus. Discovering Ethan has rekindled my love for the Bible. Unlearning church indoctrination every day. And
Nice.
Thank you for that message. You're not alone. All of us are feeling the exact same way. And this is wwhy we love this series so much.
Yeah, we totally do. You know, and I want to, you talked about the Matrix, Ethan, there for a second. So there's this, so you say, okay, look, you know, you the way you were saying it was like, hey, you live in the Matrix, you have to understand the code of it, and it is what it is, right? So, but then there's okay, so help me to understand the concept of when people are talking about like, okay, we got to break the Matrix, we got to escape the Matrix. I mean, what are they saying versus what you're trying to say here? I mean, are we just in a Matrix, and is that possibly just a good thing to say?
Well, here's where the Gnostics fall short. And I'll tell you, Paul was actually a bit of a Gnostic, not agnostic. Gnostic, right? Agnostic is someone who doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Gnostic is someone who knows, because it comes from the Greek word gnosis, which is knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most of the Gnostics throughout history it's like they hit a ceiling. They were awake enough to realize that we are trapped in a matrix. And so immediately they stop there once they see that, and they panic. They're like, oh shit, we're in a fucking prison. How do we get out? And they start looking all this. There's the prison guards. Oh my God, there's a psychopath running this prison. How do I get out? And they never stop to think that it originally was not designed as a prison. It was turned into a prison. It's just a program. It's a code. It's a computer. It's like if you had created on your computer this really cool gaming world, right? And it was just super cool. Like everything was beautiful. There was wealth, abundance, and health and happiness everywhere. And then somebody snuck into your house while you were gone, got on your computer, put a virus in the program, and then you come back and get back in the game and turn it on, and all of a sudden everything starts dying. Everything starts slowly corrupting. Now there's bad characters coming out of the wood. Who are these bad guys? I didn't program any bad guys here. And now they're enslaving all the good guys, and it turns to shit. And then so you're like, oh man, this game is awful. I got to get out of this game. No, you got to fix the fucking virus. Look, that's what Jesus did. He came to plant the code that fixes the virus. And he did. He planted it in the unconscious realm, the collective unconsciousness of humanity. The Bible, and this is why understanding the mistranslations are so important, because the Bible says that Jesus went to Hades. It doesn't say that he went to hell. Mm-hmm. Hell is an intentional mistranslation. It does not say hell. It says he went to Hades. So what's Hades? Oh, that's Greek mythology. In Roman mythology, it's Pluto. Okay, because the Romans basically just hijacked all the Greek mythology and mirrored theirs. And so under this Roman Babylonian system, we have named all of our planets after the Roman versions instead of the Greek versions. We should be calling the planets by their Greek names, really, in my opinion, because the Greeks had it accurate, and they were the first ones to fully understand these mythological symbols. So anyway, so there's a reason Pluto is the furthest furthest away, right, in that whole solar system thing, because it represents the unconscious mind. That's Hades. It's the unconscious mind. That's why it's full of fire and uncertainty and fear and all of these things that are just repressed. Because if you study psychology, you'll understand that we repress all the bad things and put it in the unconscious. It doesn't have to be that way, though. But that's what it's become under this fallen system. And so what Jesus did is, it says he went to Hades. He went to the collective unconsciousness of humanity, and it says he saved all the souls from there. Now, what's a soul? You got to know what a soul is. When you go with the religious nonsense bullshit version of a soul is this Casper the Friendly Ghost fucking looking thing that floats out of your body when you die, you missed the whole fucking thing. Like, you're way off. The soul is nothing more than a collection of the mind, will, and emotions. So it says Jesus went into the unconscious mind of humanity and freed the mind, the will, and the emotions. He set free all of those captured things that are repressed, and destroyed all of those things that are keeping us in bondage from the unseen, from underneath. Okay. And only if we tap into that, do that quantum entanglement with Christ, can we start to do that. And this whole thing is being saved is not, it's not going down to an altar and saying a magic abracadabra prayer. Now you got an all expenses paid ticket to, some resort in the sky somewhere. When you die, by the way, but while you're here, you got to stop her and be our fucking bitch and give us all your money. God damn, man. Like, what does it take to, hello, McFly, is anybody home? So what he did was he made it available. It's about what he's already done, not what you can do. And so religion is doing what Jesus said, trying to mix the new wine, what he's already done, into old wineskins, into religion, the curse of the law, Paul calls it. And it creates destruction and havoc. You get nothing out of it. You can't mix grace and the law. It just doesn't work. You're either tapped in and you let that consciousness change who you are, and it takes time, or you don't. So going back to what your original question, Jay, what these Gnostics were doing, so they stopped short. You don't want to stop short and go, oh, we're trapped in a prison by an evil creator god, the demiurge, right? Oh, that's true. I will tell you that's very true. And I talk about this stuff in some of my private library and more hidden things. That's very true. There is a demiurge that controls this matrix, but the demiurge did not create the matrix. The demiurge hijacked it, okay? And they kind of show you this in that new Matrix movie, the fourth one they made, where at the end, where the therapist who symbolizes Saturn, or the demiurge, by the way, who now controls the matrix, he hijacked it. Remember, he didn't create it; he hijacked it. And remember, he's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, right? All he has to do is control the mind. That's all they've done to you, right? Mm-hmm. They've put, and that's all that was represented in the book of Genesis, by the way, with Adam and Eve, where they were putting fig leaves on top of themselves after they failed to try to cover their shame. Those fig leaves represent religion. It's trying to cover your shame, and it doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. It's a lie. And they've enslaved and entrapped everybody with it, and they've hurt and destroyed billions of lives with it. And that's why I'm so passionate and I get so angry about it sometimes, because I was raised in it. I was subjected to it. I went through it firsthand. I saw it. My grandfather was a Southern Baptist minister. My mother raised me in a Pentecostal Church of God. And I went through every single bit of that shit that they put people, they're still putting people through today. That's why I am hell bent on destroying it with a vengeance, because it's pure evil. It is more evil, I would say, and people are going to wince at this probably, but it's more evil than someone just going out and robbing a bank or raping somebody, because at least that stuff is out in the open and it's obvious that it's bad. It's not obvious that religion is bad to most people.
Yeah, and they can also convict the person that did it. No one ever convicts the pastor.
Exactly. So here's what we got to do. And so in that last movie, the newest one they made of the Matrix, at the end, the two became one, right? All of a sudden, Neo couldn't fly without Trinity, right? The Trinity, spirit, soul, and body, right? So once Neo got shit right in here, the two became one, okay? Adam and Eve, it's a representation, Neo and Trinity. Once the two became one, they flew together, and then they conquered the Matrix, and they went back to that psychiatrist, Satan, the demiurge, and they told him, they said, we're not here to destroy this thing. We're here to take back over and control it, because he hijacked it. So for all you Gnostics out there that are living in fear, you've traded in the fig leaves of church and religion and trying to cover up that fear and shame with that old way of thinking. And you've just traded it in for another new religion called Gnosticism, where you're still living in fear, trying to cover it up with fig leaves, the fig leaves of Gnosticism, which has just become another religion. It's not that the Gnostic concepts are wrong. It's just like the Bible's not wrong. It's that they took it and they twisted it so that you wouldn't see it for what it really is. They've done that with everything because they don't want you to wake up from the Matrix. And even worse than waking up from the Matrix is they don't want you to take back over the Matrix. We don't want to destroy it. We don't want to escape it. We want to take over it.
So when we talk about escaping the Matrix, that's just not even a practical thing. Reality,
you're wasting your time. You're following them on another religious new age path that is just deceiving people in a different way. Just like the people that, they used to believe in Jesus and his return, come flying down on a white horse like Lone Ranger dodging.
So should it really?
They traded that in for Jesus on a UFO,
right.
Fuck, man.
Right. So is it more appropriate than Ethan to say instead of escaping the Matrix, you're welcoming the Matrix?
Well, it also depends on which Matrix you're talking about. If you're talking about just the current system that we're living in as a society, that Matrix, because there's several matrices,
right? That which trips people up.
Yeah, that is a program within the program. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a matrix within a matrix.
Right.
so if you're talking about that, destroying that and getting out of that, yes, you've got to get out of that matrix. We need to destroy that matrix. That's the program within the program, right?
Mhm.
It's like on your computer, Windows within Windows. Okay. Once you get out of that, now we can work on taking over the matrix, which is the actual 3D realm we inhabit, and start to control it again, instead of the reptilian brain minded people that are operating from that lower carnal mind, or science calls it the reptilian brain, instead of operating from that place of fear, survival, lust, shame, guilt, condemnation, all the evil things. Instead of operating from that mind, that brain, we're now operating from the Christ mind. And now we can take back the matrix.
So,
and then the demiurge becomes irrelevant because he's not controlling it anymore.
So would it be the Christ matrix?
You can call it that if you want. I mean, maybe that's a good way to put
Yeah,
it.
I like that.
So what do you say? Okay, so people like, that are watching this right now, they're like, listen, the Band-Aid's slowly being ripped off right now, so you can get it, okay? But people are getting it, and they're kind of getting a sense of it. Okay, so the whole concept of a God-fearing person or something like that. I mean, that's like an oxymoron, isn't it?
It is. Well, but you also have to understand, in the Old English, that Victorian English that the King James was written in, there were multiple meanings for the word fear, just like there's multiple meanings for several words we use now. Like when I say, dude, that's sick, that doesn't mean it's bad or it's unhealthy. That actually now means, because the meaning of words change over time, that means it's actually really cool, it's really awesome. But the word sick can also mean someone's unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I forgot your original question. What was it?
No, it's all good. The whole concept of a God-fearer.
That's what it was. Sorry. Okay, so when they wrote that, it doesn't. Again, you got to go back to the original Greek and Hebrew, and you have to know how was society and culture when it was written thousands of years ago, and when they use these words. And then also you're looking at the King James and it says fear God. Go back hundreds of years to that time period in the 1600s when they use the word fear interchangeably. Just like we use the word sick interchangeably, and they mean two totally different things. So when the King James says to fear the Lord thy God, it means to respect and honor, and to walk in one accord with. Okay, it doesn't mean to be scared of him. There is because otherwise the Bible ends up contradicting itself. They've translated a contradiction because it says God is love, and then another scripture it says, perfect love casts out all fear, and then it says fear God, right? Do you see? So they've created these contradictions, and not even so. Even there, they didn't really create a contradiction when they translated it, because back then people knew what it meant. The contradiction is created now since the words have the meaning in our minds of these words have changed, right?
It'd be interesting to really witness in today's world, 2023, is if you were to put out a how you say, like a message or a verse, if you would, of that, and the way it was written back then, and have just a few people, without even talking about it, interpret it and see what their different interpretations were, just to kind of see how they would say. This is
100%. Well, and honestly, most of religion is created from the mistranslations and the misinterpretations.
Yeah.
Okay, because otherwise they wouldn't have anything to stand on. But what they've done is they've had the ability to influence weak-minded people or ignorant people or people that are susceptible to this type of deception. Those are the people they reel in, and that their ability to do this is waning. It's getting smaller and smaller. And the more we talk about this, that's why Jesus said, go into the world and preach the gospel. And again, gospel doesn't mean anything religious, like they programmed us to think. Gospel literally means good news. Jesus never said anything religious. Jesus said, go into the world and preach the good news. What's the good news? That you are sovereign, that you are free, and it's there for the taking. The kingdom of heaven is at hand right here, right now. And it's for the taking. And if you don't do it, it's just going to sit there until you do. You're going to remain under the control of the matrix until you decide to change it. Until you decide, like in the movie, Neo finally went and found the key maker, right? Mm-hmm. And he got the keys. Well, once you get the keys, you still got to go and you go through the right door. And then you got to go see the architect, the demiurge. Once you go see the architect and the demiurge and you tell him to fuck off, now you're well on your way to taking over the matrix, right?
Mm-hmm.
To take over the matrix, change the code.
Take over it, change the code like Neo did. They gave you all the answers in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like that. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. That's why it's one of my favorite movies. And I will tell you this because I know we only have a few more minutes left, but there's about 5 more bullet points I want to hit. And they're short in my notes before we leave, because I don't want to leave these behind for the next series. So we talked about that concept of the fig leaves that Adam and Eve originally created, that they sewed together. Well, you know what that means? They sewed them together. It takes artificial effort, right? It's not natural. Leaves aren't sewn together naturally. So it's an artificial creation. That's how you know it's religion, right? It's an artificial creation, sewing together the fig leaves to create the religion, to cover their shame. And then what's interesting is God shows up, right? This story is so fucking cool once you start seeing the symbols. Man, once you're like Neo and you start seeing the code in the matrix, dude, it gets real powerful. Right?
Everything changes.
Oh, it's so awesome. So when I read the Bible now, I'm like Neo looking at the code in the matrix, right?
That's
and it doesn't have the same effect or influence or power over me
the
way religion does for people.
You're going into it with a very different set of lenses.
Yep, so I'm seeing it for what it really is, not for what they programmed it to make you think that it is, right? Because when they're in the matrix, they're actually not seeing a real world. Their brain, their mind is telling them that's what they're seeing. But what is actually there? It's just a bunch of code, right? So once you get to that point where you can read the Bible and you don't see religion anymore, you see the code, now you're free. And he who the Son sets free is free indeed.
With so many translations of the Bible, for those that want to reread it with this new mindset, Ethan, which version do you suggest?
It depends, because they all have errors in them. I use a bunch of them. I cross-reference with a bunch of them. You know, it's kind of like if you're looking at a bunch of different, if you're looking at a map or if you have a collection of maps and they're all a little bit inaccurate in some places, the best thing you can do is get all the maps together and kind of look at and start to narrow down and triangulate based on what this one says, this one says, this one says, this one says. So I start putting these pins on the map, and it's like, I know it's somewhere in between all these pins, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you've got to do. And that's what I do. I usually use, I think I have roughly about 20 different versions of the Bible that I keep on tap in my phone, the Bible in my phone, that I can easily just go to whenever I want to. But sometimes I'll go outside of that as well. And I'm always going back to the original Hebrew and the original Greek when it's a scripture that carries a lot of impact and meaning. And I want to know what it really says, right? So
on a personal note,
yeah.
How does your family feel now that you've had this translation of
translation awakening?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to answer that the same way Jesus answered that. Who is my family?
There you go.
You know, it's not blood relation. And this is how we get caught up. And this is how humanity's been trapped in the whole being ruled by royal elites. And the whole trap of religion with bloodlines, especially the Judaic religion, the Zionist religion, which is not biblical at all, by the way. What they did is, again, it was that whole thing over there in the Middle East, that's a distraction. God is not setting up a physical kingdom in one location. There is not one biological bloodline of chosen people. That's a satanic, racist idea. And then they wonder why they get so much backlash from people. Well, that's why. Stop acting racist and satanic and then projecting your racism and your Satanism on everyone else. And then the problem will fix itself, because the Bible says, Paul said several times in the New Testament, he said, pay no heed to Jewish fables, which minister nothing but endless questions. And he said, pay no heed to the genealogies, the bloodlines. And he said, the real Jerusalem or the real Israel is that which is above, the higher realms of consciousness, not that which is below. So this whole thing is what's caused us to be deceived to begin with. This idea that we've had too much of a carnal mind, a worldly mind, and focused too much on the bloodlines and physical locations when we're supposed to turn in here and look for spiritual bloodlines in spiritual locations. And so, as far as my bloodline relatives go, a lot of them aren't on board with this, but I can tell you this, they've heard enough from me at this point, and they're smart enough to know that they just shouldn't open their mouth because they can't even
hold a candle to
me. They can't. They know I'll just destroy them, and they know that. And so deep down inside, it's working because I'm a living example of the truth. I don't push it on them. It's there. They can watch this and listen to this anytime. It's for whomsoever will. And again, it doesn't mean that I have all the answers. I don't. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly getting new downloads. But there are some people in this world that are still stuck in that shit matrix. And there's some of us who have begun to come out of it and can see it from a bird's eye view. And we are helping people. Doesn't mean we have all the answers. But what I can do is I can show you how to get where I've gone. You know, so if I want to make $1 million in 1 year, I go find somebody who's made $1 million. They'll show me how to make $1 million.
Exactly.
They might not be able to show me how to make 20 billion in a year, but they know how to make $1 million because they've done it. So I go to that. If I want to learn how to make 20 billion in 1 year, I go find someone that's made 20 billion and I do what they did. It's the same thing with this. You know, I don't have all the answers yet, but if you want to get to where I'm at, I can help you do that. So, and real quick too, there's like 3 other bullet points here I wanted to hit.
We're good on time. We have a few minutes, so we're
okay. And I'm fine. I mean, I probably can't really go. I don't know how long you can go, but I definitely can't go longer than 30 more minutes.
Oh, that's per 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 is fine.
Okay. Yeah. 30 would be my cap. Absolute cap. Because I've got a lot of things to do today. So we're talking about what's that?
Another church to run? Do you have one to do? Another stop?
No churches. God, I'm trying to take down the churches just like Jesus did. If I'm going into a church, I'm doing what Jesus did. I'm flipping over the tables and I'm beating everyone's ass with a whip, metaphorically speaking, of course. But he actually did it, you know.
Yeah.
So that concept of after the fall happens, which is this corruption of the subconscious mind, which bleeds into the conscious mind. Remember, it happens first in the subconscious. That's why the cabal puts out all the symbols to feed your subconscious mind, because they know once they got your subconscious, once they've got Eve to take the fruit, then it's only a matter of time before Adam takes it also. The conscious mind takes it also, and then starts acting it out and doing it without even knowing. Look, I hate to say this, and this is not a sexist thing, but this is a symbolic thing. The feminine is a receptor. It's a vessel. The feminine receives, right? It's a receiver. It is passive, whereas the masculine is active. It's a giver, right? Which I've explained this before, is why the Bible's not sexist when it refers to God in the masculine, in the sacred masculine, because that portion of source, that's the giver. That's the active masculine force that gives. It's the seed, right? Okay. And we're supposed to take that feminine. We're supposed to take on the feminine form, be the bride of Christ, to receive that seed, that word, right? So we can give birth. We're the one. Like, I don't know why people get pissed about this. Like, I'm telling you to take on the divine feminine form. Stop putting it on God and making God a tranny. God's not a tranny. Okay, the divine feminine and sacred masculine exists everywhere in source, but the portion of source that is active in your life and in existence is masculine. It has to be, because it's an active force. It's just like electricity. You can't go argue with an electrician and tell him it's okay to stick the white wires on the black wires, right? And you're going to blow shit up. You're going to burn shit down. You got to keep it's a polar system. It's male and female, positive and negative, white and black, hot and cold. If you don't keep things in their proper place, they're not going to function. You can't put the fucking antifreeze in the gas tank and the gas in the antifreeze or in the your radiator. You're going to fuck shit up. It doesn't mean that the radiator or the coolant is more important than the gasoline, or the gasoline's more important than the coolant. They serve different functions for the whole vessel, for the whole system, right? Okay, so this whole concept of that the feminine is the receiver. That's why the serpent went to the feminine first. because he's not going to get the masculine to receive. The masculine can't receive. Metaphorically, symbolically, when you're talking about the realm of consciousness, which is what this is all about, the masculine can't receive, okay, unless the feminine has already received it first. Then she can give to the masculine. The divine feminine is the one that gives birth. The masculine can't give birth. I hate to break it to all y'all out there that want to live in fantasy world, but if you're a man, you cannot give birth to a human child. Okay. It just, at least not naturally. That's for fucking sure. So that's just science. That's biology. You can't argue with chromosomes and DNA. It just like, stop it. Just stop it. It's time to come back to reality. So the serpent had to get the seed. That's what fruit is. It has seeds in it. Anything that has seed is a fruit. Cucumbers and tomatoes are not vegetables. They're fruit because they have seeds in them, right? Celery and carrots and potatoes, those are vegetables because a vegetable is either, or lettuce, that's a vegetable. A vegetable is either a leaf or a root or a stalk. A fruit is something that bears the seed. So that's why the serpent didn't tempt her to take the leaves. If she would have ate the leaves, then nothing would have happened. If she would have ate the root, made some fucking tea with the root and the bark and all that stuff, nothing would have happened. She had to eat the fruit. She had to get the seed in her. Once the feminine receives the seed, how many people know this is biology 101? This is Bow Chicka Wow Wow 101. When the feminine receives the seed, she can give birth to something, right? Okay. So the serpent knew he had to get the feminine, which is the subconscious mind, first to receive that seed. Once that seed was received, that subconscious mind received the seed, then it's planted, it starts to grow, and now it gives birth to fruit that influences the conscious mind, and the conscious mind starts going, okay, well, this is in my garden, so this must be what it is. And that's how you live. The conscious mind is very stupid. So if y'all ladies want to get your little jab in there, you can say, yeah, the masculine is kind of stupid, because he can't do anything without the feminine. The conscious mind can't do anything without the subconscious mind. That's why we have to be very careful what we allow in the subconscious mind. That it's kind of funny, actually, that religion was a little bit correct on some things. When I remember being in Sunday school when I was a kid, singing that song, be careful little eyes what you see, be careful little ears what you hear, be careful little mouth what you say, be careful little feet where you go. There's some truth to that. Now, the way they were pushing it wasn't correct, but there is truth to that. So what had happened when the serpent got the seed into the subconscious mind, into Eve, the feminine, she gave birth to what became the fall, because then she was starting to share it with her husband, the conscious mind, the sacred masculine, which is the active force that acts out here. Subconscious divine feminine acts in here. The conscious mind carries what's in here and puts it out here. It's actually just really, really simple concepts. Nothing sexist about it at all, not even fucking close. And I would challenge anyone, and I would say, just as someone who's a student of psychology myself, if you get triggered by these types of things, and
you got bigger issues. You got
issues. You got some. Eve's been eating some bad fruit in here, okay, and you need to fix that, because you shouldn't be triggered by nature. That's all we're talking about here. That's it. I'm just talking about the mechanics of how shit actually works, not the way it works in your little triggered, offended fantasy land in your mind. Okay. So here's what happened. So Eve, the subconscious mind, took the fruit, got the seed. It gave birth to more fruit. Adam, the conscious mind, started acting it out. It caused the fall. That's what caused the shame. So then they started doing their artificial stuff. How do I cover my shame? Oh, I know. I need to get back to God. I'm disconnected from God. This is why I have shame. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create this thing called religion. I'm going to sew together, artificially create something from the natural, the fig leaves. I'm going to parse it all together artificially to create a covering for my shame, to make me feel as if I'm connected back to God again. That's what religion is. That's why
really well said.
That's why it was the sewing together of the fig leaves. Okay, but here's what happened. God showed up and he said, where are you? God can't find him. Why can't God find him? Not because, dude, God knows where everybody is. It's not, you got to look at what it's telling you. It's not telling you what it's saying. What it's saying is telling you what is you got to read between the lines. You got to look into the hidden meaning there. God can't find them because they're operating in religion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The fig leaves they sewed together artificially. They took the natural that God created and they parsed it together. Babylon, confusion by mixture. They mixed together a bunch of natural things, artificially sewed them together and covered themselves with them. And when you cover yourself with religion, God can't find you.
Yep.
So then Adam has to come out from behind the leaves, the artificial covering. And he says, here am I. And he says, I was afraid when I heard you. Because you have that moment when you start to shed the religion, because you start to hear God. You're like, oh my God, I fucked this up. I fucked up my whole life. And I let them deceive me and thinking this religion thing that they artificially sewed together from the natural that God created. And I let it cover me up and God couldn't see me. Right? And so Adam is ashamed even more. And what's the first thing God says? He says, who told you that you were naked? Who told you to be ashamed?
Mm-hmm.
Who? I didn't tell you were naked. There's nothing wrong with your nakedness. I fucking created you that way. So they let the reptiles of this world convince them that there's something wrong with them. So they have to create this fake system to cover it up. And it hides them from God. God can't find you. You've got to get rid of the fig leaves. Get rid of the religion. Get rid of the artificial system and the matrices that the world has created, that the serpent has created and tricked you. Actually, the serpent didn't even create it. The serpent tricked you into creating it.
Right.
You created your own trap in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's so messed up.
That is such a mind screw. It's so well said. It's so poignant. And it's so twisted at the same time because people go into religious organizations in their mind, the exact opposite. They think they're walking through the steeple doors to connect with God, when essentially you're really blocking it.
You're blocking God. Yeah. Why do you think they have stained glass windows on there? Because they don't want anybody on the outside seeing what's going on the inside, and they don't want anybody on the inside finding out that what's going on out here and seeing the real problem. They go in there to hide from the problem. The church is their fig leaves. It's time to shed the fig leaves. But here's what's going to happen. After you reach that stage of now you shed the fig leaves, God's going to kill an animal. He's going to kill an animal and cover you with animal skins. Okay. And the reason is because what you've done now is you have to get to a place where you're willing to kill the carnal mind, because that's the animal. That's the only animal God wanted you to sacrifice ever. God didn't want you in Jeremiah chapter 7, Isaiah chapter 1, and David said it a couple times in Psalm. God never commanded them to commit ritualistic blood sorcery sacrifice like the fucking pagans were doing with Molech and Baal. Never told them to do that. They wanted it themselves. And so, yeah, they go back to what God said is do the sacrifice. No, read it carefully. Start at Exodus chapter 18, when all they had was natural law, the 10 Commandments, which basically just says, don't be a fucking asshole. That's it. There was no sacrificing animals, right? No ritualistic blood sacrifices and blood sorcery. Bullshit. Jeremiah chapter 7, God said, I did not command your fathers when they came out of Egypt to do this. They wanted it. They did it themselves. So what happened was Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. Remember, it always comes from the subconscious. Where's his father-in-law coming from? His wife. That's his wife's husband or wife's father, right? Mm-hmm. So it's your subconscious's mind, that the family that's in your subconscious mind, that's coming to. So Jethro comes to Moses and he said, you got a lot of problems here. It'd be a lot easier if you just did things the way the world did them. Make yourself a king, create a government, a state, and then make your brother Aaron, the priest, create a religion, a church. And then you can make the animal sacrifices, just like the Baal worshipers do. And they don't have any problems. The people are under control. Moses caved in. You're Moses, by the way, in that story. You're Moses. So Moses caved in his search for God and peace and order and all of that. And he said, okay, fine. So he petitioned God God didn't want to give him this. He said, I already gave you everything you need. Just like he gave Adam, I already gave you everything you need. But since y'all going to fuck shit up, I got to cut up an animal and cover you with animal skins now. Moses did the same thing Adam and Eve did. Moses, God's like, dude, I already gave you everything you need. It's all in the 10 Commandments. It just says, don't be a dick. That's it. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. But no, you want to be like the world. You want a king. You want a government. And you want a religion. You want a priest. You want a church. So now we can have separation of church and state, right? So then they fell into this trap. And God, and finally, they kept asking and asking. I want this. I need this. I want this. I need this. And God just finally said, you know what? Fuck it. Here you go. And you want this system? Here's how it's going to go for you. And you're not going to be able to follow it. I'm eventually going to send Christ to fix it. But until then, y'all going to fucking suffer through it because you asked for it. And that's what happened. God never commanded them to do this. They begged for it. And God's a gentleman. He'll give you what you want. He's not a slave driver. He's not a taskmaster. He's not a tyrant. He's not going to force you to do something. He's going to give you exactly what you want, and you have free will. So that's all that happened. That's how we ended up with all this religious bullshit to begin with, because they wanted to be like the world.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Right? And then religion just takes everything out of context, right? And so they take the text out of context and they leave everybody with the con. That's what religion is. That's what it does. Yep. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil is religion. It's going outside of yourself, trying to get something that you think you don't already have in here. And it's already in here. The tree of life's already in here. You can partake of that one and it won't separate you from God. As soon as you partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as soon as you start going in those churches out there that say this is good and this is evil, now you're partaking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and now you're fallen. Now you've got to get into blood, ritualistic animal sacrifice and cover yourselves with animal skins. But at the end of the day, what it really means is a higher meaning is you sacrifice that carnal mind, that animal, and then the animal skins that cover you become a symbol that I've sacrificed and killed the carnal mind within. And now I'm connected to God again in the way it was meant to be, the way I was created.
You know what's interesting for those that are, I'm going to just reference Shiva from the Hindu religion, let's just say, but he's always in animal skins.
Yeah. Well, it's the carnal mind. It's sacrificing the carnal mind to get to the higher mind, the Christ consciousness.
It's sacrificing the carnal mind. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it's the flesh. That's why there's 5 wounds on Christ.
Ethan.
There's 5 wounds on Christ, 1 in each hand, 1 in each foot, and 1 in the side. The 5 wounds symbolize the 5 human senses: sight, taste, touch, smelling, and hearing. David took 5 stones out of the Jordan River to kill Goliath. Goliath is the ego, the carnal mind. It's that which seems undefeatable. And all he did was as a pure little child. That's why Jesus said, you must become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. You must be like that child David that kills the carnal mind. And how's he do it? He takes 5 stones, which symbolize the dead. Stones are dead. The 5 human senses are dead. In the spirit realm, they're dead. They're meaningless. You sacrifice the 5 human senses and you pop that giant right between the eyes where the pineal gland is. And he drops dead just like that. As soon as you activate that pineal gland, that's what killing Goliath was. So you become the child, David the child. You take those 5 dead stones, the carnal mind, the 5 human senses, and you use it to kill the carnal mind. Use it against itself. Put it in subjection under you. This is what the Bible means. It's not sexist when it says the man is the head of the woman. It's saying the sacred masculine, if it is not the head of the divine feminine, the receiver, the subconscious mind, if the conscious mind is not the head of the subconscious mind and what goes into it, which will give birth to what ends up influencing and manifesting in your life, then you have a fucking problem. That's it. There's nothing sexist in it. It's only because the religious and carnally minded and worldly minded people don't know how to read it.
For sure. Which is a massive amount of the world's population.
But we're going to get better
Which
at
is
that
why
because you got to keep
we're
watching
having this series each
Yeah.
and every week.
And once you get rid of all that, then you know, oh, dude, I'm not supposed to be broke. That's why this is the Rich Jesus series. And it's not just rich in monetary things, financial matters.
It's
It's
abundant.
rich in everything.
It's
rich
abundant in everything.
And that's why people really got to wrap their head around that. Hey, so as we
Ethan,
start
that was amazing.
As we start to wind down, buddy, and I want to encourage everybody to go to ethanlucas.com. This guy gets out there, he wakes up, and he does this out of the goodness of his heart to help you get there. So there's ways on ethanlucas.com you can find to support him, his music, his books, his supplemental line,
glutathione,
Jesus, everything. But just
if you're wondering why his mind is
you're
so
buying
damn
this shit
clear.
from someone. You're buying this shit from someone. Buy it from someone who shows up for you.
Don't support the cabal, and they're going to give you shit supplements anyway. I've gone through.
Sure.
I'm 42, almost 43 years old, raised by a nutritionist essentially because my grandfather was really the one who raised me, not my father, because he was gone working all the time, and it just, I don't want to get into all that stuff. It doesn't matter, but I was raised on nutrition, and I knew the quality of supplements had to be there. I knew at the age of 8 or 9 years old that if a company didn't have stringent processes for extracting the nutrients that they're creating, if they were using heat or chemical extraction, they were just, the vitamins and minerals and things that said on the label, they're in there, but the body can't use them. They're inactive or they're dead. So everything that I promote, if I promote it, I put my name behind it. I've tested it. I've tried it personally. I've seen other people test it and try it. I know it works. And I will only promote and support things that actually work. That's just my MO. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to support it because I'm not going to use it. And if I'm not using it, I'm not going to ask anybody else to use it. I take this and the glutathione supplement and a multivitamin. That's all I take now. Since I started adding this to everything, I could cut out like 12 or 13 other things. It saves me like $200 a month because I added the ASEA Redox, which makes everything else work better.
Right. And remember, so did Jesus. He needed this to help with his skin after
That's
the 40
right. Anoint your head with this.
Anoint your head. This is real. That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us as you always do. My brother, thank you very much for bringing it as you always do. We love you.
Amazing.
And appreciate you doing what you're doing here. All right, everybody. Remember to celebrate life, and life will celebrate you back. All right.
It's all about the Christ matrix. The Christ matrix. Start thinking about it from that perspective, and it's going to stop trying
to leave it. And look, one last point. Sorry, one last point, because that's a good thing to understand why you need to take. They want you to get in a place where you're either subservient to their false gods and religion that they created in the matrix, so you'll stay stuck there, or it's the out of the frying pan and into the fire. They've got the Gnosticism waiting for you on the other side, to where you jump out of the frying pan into the fire and you're like, oh my God, we're in a trap. We have to escape. How do we escape? And you spend all this time hating the world and trying to escape it, and thereby destroying your own life and the lives of others around you, instead of doing what Christ told you to do, where he said, fear not. You know how many times he said, fear not? It's probably one thing in the Bible that said more than anything else, fear not. And one of the things Jesus said was, fear not, for I have overcome the world. Why are we not trying to overcome the world? And are you going to overcome the world if you're broke? Are you not going to be forced to take the mark of the beast if you're broke? If you are independently wealthy, you won't have to take their mark of the beast. You won't be subject to their system. They're banking on you remaining in fear and trying to escape the matrix instead of taking over it or remaining within it, so they can trap you. And part of that is convincing you that it's somehow pious and humble and good to be broke.
It ain't no fun.
Don't be broke.
Ain't no fun.
Don't be broke and a joke at the same time, because that's what will be happening if you're broke, because the real solution's out there and you don't have to be broke. All right. Love you, brother. Thanks again for hanging with us today.
Too. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Yeah.
And together with Ethan's help, we are turning the universal key to global harmony and creating a unified world. Thank you so much for tuning in, and tune in often. Tell all your friends, and most importantly, may all your beautiful dreams come true. Many blessings.
And there we go. Great job.